Hello, welcome to Notes to Nerds. This is not Eric, this is Greg. Eric's
Really?
currently not here. I'm here with the lovely and talented Miss Leslie Easterbrook.
Hope, lovely and talented. Those are the nicest things I've probably been called. But, I'm just going to pretend that I think they're true.
I still remember when I was a young man and watching police academies with my dad introducing me to them. And oh my God, the teenage hormones, shall we say. Yes, you're lovely.
Yeah? Oh my gosh.
Still to this day.
They were probably, in terms of working, the time of my life.
Huh.
The first police academy was sheer joy, and we just got together a week before last and did a big signing near the airport in Los Angeles. And Steve Guttenberg came in from New York, and Timmy Kazarensky came in from Chicago, and people were, it was really well put together. It was the Hollywood show, that's what we did. And a woman named Sandra Locke finally got this done, and they brought people from all, it was just,
I bet it sounds like it's a blast.
we were laughing constantly. Hugh Wilson, who's no longer with us, was the most wonderful director in terms of saying, what would you do with this? But not making you feel intimidated by that. Sometimes you're not really sure you need a director. But we would go and work the scenes out. He'd let us go work the scenes out. And then he'd be ready to shoot our scenes, the next scenes. And he would come and he would look at what we're doing. And he'd say, okay, bring the cameras over, we're shooting it. And so we had a chance to improv. He had this wonderful free rein kind of concept of what would make the craziness pay off. And we weren't really thinking about result. We were all just really having fun in the craziness.
So he really did just give you the reins and told you to run with them. And
He did. He rarely
went, this is awesome, and let's do this.
He rarely changed anything. He rarely interfered with what people came up with. And so we learned to kind of work together as an improv group, just creatively. We had the dialogue that was written, but all of the attitudes and the characters and the differences, we had a chance to really explore. And I'd never had that experience. So it was like somebody just opened my prison door.
Oh, that sounds... and that's another thing I was going to ask you about. With those movies, there was such a huge cast of characters. Not only, the actors themselves, but the parts they played.
Yes.
May I ask, other than yourself, of course, who is your favorite people to work with on that?
Oh every single one of them. And we've lost some. David Graff, who played Tackleberry, is one of my incredible losses. Bubba Smith, who I adored. And he's gone. Deborah Lee Scott, who was so good in everything she ever did. That's just was a terrible tragedy. And Hugh Wilson, of course, is gone. And it's just heartbreaking. And I'm sure there are more. And I'm going to get too emotional to want to go there. But the friendships that were formed on that movie are definitely for life. Andy Rubin, who played my boyfriend when I opened my hoo-has, that part is hard. But the memories live on. And we're all willing to laugh together, and we all agreed that we only laugh that hard when we're with each other. So I think there was some magic in that because it spawned so many more movies. And I couldn't do number 2. I was doing it, I shouldn't say dreadful, but it really was pretty dreadful with Johnny Depp, and I couldn't do number 2. And Bubba told me they weren't going to come to me, but he wasn't going to do number 3 unless they called me back, and so they did. And it was all those things were going on. But Warner Brothers was wonderful to us. And Paul Maslansky, who produced them, he was like Dad, even though he was, close to our ages. But I just was thrilled to be in it, and I got it in a really odd way. It felt odd to me. Is that when I was on Laverne and Shirley as Rhonda, my ex-husband, who has since passed away, but he wanted to go to the Angels and get free tickets to see Rod Carew when he was traded to the Angels. So he called them up in the office, and he said, my wife is Rhonda on Laverne and Shirley. Can she sing the national anthem there? And they said, well, we'll have to, what's her name and all that kind of thing. And he said, and if she did, could we get free tickets? And they said, well, if we decide that's a good idea, we'll give you the free tickets. And so a couple of days later, I guess they called him and asked and said, oh yeah, we'd like to have her do that. So I came home from rehearsing on Laverne and Shirley exhausted, and he said, you're going to be singing the national anthem at Anaheim Stadium for the Angels. And I went, I don't know it. I only sing it in a group. I've never sung it by myself, so everybody does these wild things with the anthem. What am I going to do? And so I went out and bought the music. At my piano, I said, what am I going to do? I thought, well, the only thing I can do is a cappella. I got
Yeah.
a pitch pipe, and I said, we're just going to sing this thing, and I'm going to do the last section an octave higher than anybody else would do it, than the first section, and maybe that'll be enough to set it aside. So I did that, and at that particular game in the stadium was the woman who was in charge of the pregame for the Super Bowl. And
Wow.
she decided she wanted my anthem in the Super Bowl, and I had never done this before. So the Angels had me out a few more times, then she contacted me and had to work it out with Pete Rozelle and all of that, and I realized that I was going to be singing the national anthem for the Super Bowl.
Wow.
And when I did, the limo driver they sent to get me there couldn't find the Rose Bowl. And I mean, I was so late, it was so, it's one story kind of leads to another,
Yeah.
but it's that Super Bowl. Paul Maslansky, who was doing Police Academy, was at the Super Bowl, and he decided that he should see me for Callahan. But then, when I got the role, and we're in Toronto shooting the first one, he says, I want to sing, you sing for the Blue Jays, and then do O Canada. And I don't know that, so they gave me the music for that. I thought it was like a march, and of course, I was thrown off the set because it is like a prayer. They do
Yeah.
Oh Canada, which is beautiful. I thought it was
Land of the
Oh
free.
Canada, our home and native land. This was so funny when I got to that set. The whole crew was like, what did you do to our anthem? But we were in the limousine going to, which was nice to have, going to the Blue Jay Stadium. And Paul said, if I had known you were Rhonda on Laverne and Shirley, I never would have seen you for this role. He was very kind of nasty about it. And I said, well, that's really limited thinking. And he said, oh, fine. That's my thinking is my fault. And I said, your thinking is always your fault. And then we started laughing and everything was fine. But I thought it was kind of serendipity how the Police Academy thing came around.
So I was going to ask you, how intimidating was it going from like at least an actress behind the camera and all that to going and singing in front of all those people? I mean,
Well, I started out wanting to be an opera singer. That's what I was
Oh,
pursuing.
wow.
And then I got distracted. After I graduated from college, my girlfriend was a harpist. Her dad was president of the Burbank Symphony. I was from Nebraska. She's from California. She called me and she said, your dad wants to know if you'd like to come and sing with the Burbank Symphony. And Rudolf Frimmel was a composer, I think he's Hungarian, that I sang all of his music with my dad when I was growing up.
I think Himmel's
And-
actually Czech.
Czechoslovakian, you're absolutely right. So I said, I would love to. I think that's a neat thing to do. And I went to California and sang that thing. And the trombone player's best friend was an agent at CMA, a young agent my age. And the president, the head of music at Universal was there. And they talked me into not doing the opera, not going to Switzerland and working with Maria Stadter, and not going to Juilliard and taking the free master's, offer that I had.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I stayed in California thinking I would pursue opera, and then I got talked into doing an audition for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And they wanted to put it on the Muni Opera, and it's the first time I'd ever been done live. But they wanted a woman who was over 5'8", so that it would look
look like the
obvious with the
dwarfs.
dwarfs and everything, but still not big enough so that Prince Charming could get me on the horse. And so I went to the audition and got equity contract and did that show, and that was the change and everything. And the opera went away, except that I still love singing legit.
Can I ask you what's your favorite aria? I mean,
I
know it's a hard question.
Probably the one that all singers will say. Who are sopranos, Un Bel Di from Butterfly.
it's about to say Man and Butterfly is always a classic.
Well, it's just that it's such a beautiful song. It's so well orchestrated. It's just gorgeous. Like the piano arrangements and whatnot. And with the symphony, it's amazing when you sing it. But the thought of the life of that woman and having her child
Oh, yeah.
taken
It's
away
a
by
sad
his
story, yes.
father, and you can't see her as a heroine. And it's amazing to immerse yourself into that world, into her world. And then be that emotional, but also be able to hit all those notes. And it's such a challenge. I love challenges. We all do in one way or the other. But sorry, I'm telling way stories you don't care about.
No, I love arias, honestly. I mean, come on, when somebody asks about arias, they know and listen to their fair share of operas. But I'm pretty sure most of the guests
Well,
are
listen to
probably...
your voice. You probably sing.
Not really.
Really?
Other than playing a violin, I'm tone deaf.
Really?
Yeah.
With that voice?
Yeah.
Some things happen. I have one lazy eye, so you're tone deaf.
I was also going to ask, out of curiosity, with the Police Academy films, What do you think about the multi-generational that's gone? In particular, as I mentioned, my father coming home laughing about this film, me being,
A baby.
early teens.
Yeah.
No,
Well.
I'm not that old yet, or young.
Well, you can fool me.
But even now, like I was talking to my nephew as we walked past your booth earlier, and he's like, "I've seen these movies," pointing to the American or Police Academy movies.
It is amazing.
I mean, the lasting power of that, and I mean, what's your opinion on that? How do you feel about that?
I just feel it's a miracle. It's a miracle that the sense of humor, of Hugh Wilson and the sense of humor that's in that script, and the way it all came together, that it is as funny as the script was. And I fell off a chair reading the script when Commandant Lassard and the podium and all of that. And I knew George Gaines. I had done a production of King and I with George.
Oh.
So I knew him and I'd worked with him, and I knew his personality and his kind of, that face, that rubber face. And I saw him at that podium and I thought, this is true. I fell off a chair. I'm thinking, this is the funniest thing I've ever read. But I laughed out loud as I read the script. And I thought, I fell in love with it. And then when I met the people who were playing all the different characters, they could not have been cast better.
Oh yeah.
I had never played anything like it, so
And you
I
could
didn't.
tell.
I was concerned that I wouldn't be up to it, but I knew everybody else would be. And getting to work with Bubba Smith, who's a big football star, and all that.
Well, as you say, you could tell by just how much fun you guys had in the movie. It comes across on the film and on that.
It was constant. It was constant laughter and adorable practical jokes. And Scott Thompson, who played Copeland in the movie, he had a way, and I kept forgetting because we'd be really tired. I'd have a day off, and I'd be in the hotel, and I'd hear someone knock on the door, and I think, oh, I'm not ready for the maid. I'm really, really tired. Open the door, and it would be Scott with a bag of potato chips in a fez or in some other wild hat. I mean, that kind of thing was just going on in the hotel and on set, but it all got captured into the movie. And I think that's why the first one really worked at all, is that there was this wonderful, we were all encouraged to be as crazy as we
And it
felt
just
like
caught
being.
fire to the sequels.
Yeah. And then when I didn't do number 2 and was asked to come back to 3, it was like a miracle. That felt like a miracle too.
I was going to ask, to the parallel of that, you did the Rom Zombie.
Yeah,
Out
and
of curiosity,
that was also one of the most exciting experiences of my life, working with Rob.
I'd like to ask these questions because, as you mentioned, the whole happy, cheerful, laughing tone comes across in the police academies, but the tone of Devil's Rejects is quite a different tone, with the horror, the gore, the shock value of a lot of it too.
Yeah, and the over the top.
Oh yes.
There's a lot, but the characters are big enough that you can go where I like to go. Opera, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Grand Opera. I like to be able to see you and, I mean, you don't get to go there in life.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, if you meant that, somebody would lock you up.
Definitely raise an eyebrow at least.
It just emotionally, for me, reading Mother Firefly, what I auditioned with was the interrogation scene. And it's really so well written. Everything that Rob writes is just intricately perfect.
Yeah.
And I worked on it in New York, and I had to fly back for the audition to LA. And it was in Venice, so it's close to the LA airport. But when I got the script, I thought, how do I work on this? Because my husband has an apartment that he'd gotten in Brooklyn when he was there directing the Cosby Show, writing the Cosby Show. And you can't in an apartment, let go like
Thin
that.
walls.
You can't do it. You could do it on the street, but you might get someone looking at you and arresting you. I thought the subway. I can do this on the subway. So I got on the subway and I went clear uptown to the river, and then went and came back. And I sat there reading it out loud, and not one person ever looked at me like something was wrong with me. I'm just doing this. Most of it was like pretty, but I wanted to be able to feel the freedom of the crazy woman. Because they don't monitor themselves. They don't check themselves. It's one of the reasons we put them away, but it's one of the things that's so fascinating about people with mental, with
Instability,
crazy.
yes.
Instability, yeah. And so I was screaming on the subway, and I got off, looked at the river, got back on, and I screamed all the way back to Brooklyn. And then I got on the plane, and I thought, oh my God, this is the best material. This is, as terms of an actor stretching, This was better than Police Academy, better than Laverne and Shirley, better than any of the theater I'd been doing for years. This was something where I was dying to go and I wasn't sure I could get there. So that's the kind of a barrier that you want to break through, because that's just one you get to eliminate. And you know you can go into those places on camera with a whole crew around. I can do it alone or talking now, but to do it under those circumstances with a time limit, working with other actors and have to adjust, which is sometimes wonderful and irritating. But I went to the audition and I was nervous, but this thing was just so set in my head. And I did the audition, got the job, was thrilled, and then we did a table read. And he played my audition, which is on one of the DVDs. It's the exact same performance I gave on the set.
That is spectacular.
When I'm going like really crazy and carrying on. And I thought, it's like an aria. I said, this is like, how the woman in Un Bel-Dì, singing Un Bel-Dì, feels when she can't have her son and she loses everything.
And her life is stripped from her.
Yeah,
yes.
stripped from her. It was just a different way of doing it.
Portraying
One's
it.
an ugly way of doing it, the other's a beautiful way of doing it. But the emotion is just as big.
Let's say sorrow versus anger in that situation.
Yeah.
I was going to ask though, with Devil's Rejects and all that, there's Rob Zombie is a larger than life character, not only music, but his movies and his personality.
And he's brilliant.
Oh, the man is absolutely brilliant. I agree.
I absolutely bow down, and I am grateful to him every day of my life.
I was going to say, how is it working under him, with him being the director over you and all that? I mean, is there any intimidation points or anything like that? Or, there's rumors of him being a perfectionist. And,
even though he had us all to dinner the night before we started shooting, and he's out in his backyard flipping burgers, right? He's just kind of normal, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm intimidated by him, but I also was very impressed at that. And we were sitting with Tyler Main and his wife Renee, and we were talking about the business, and all of a sudden I said to them, you two should make movies, and they're now making movies. And that was the night before we started. But and when he was flipping the burgers, and he was real friendly and nice, and I wasn't just intimidated, as I thought I would be. And at the reading, when we just did the script reading, he wanted to put it on tape. This was before our first rehearsal. I was intimidated. I was still a little intimidated. And then I just thought, no, I just have to learn. I have to learn from him, and that was. Then also I didn't know what he'd be like to work with. I thought he might be exacting. Sometimes that can be hard.
So there's rumors about him being a perfectionist and all that, especially when it came to his music and all that, and you've heard stories from about him and his band. That's why I was curious about when it was coming down to him directing and all that, and being under him.
My favorite story, Rob's story, is that there's a shootout film when we're at the farm and the cops are surrounding. It's the beginning of the movie, and we know it's going to happen. We're sitting ducks. We're surrounded, right? Rob has Sherry and I sitting on the floor of the kitchen. And I'm thinking, this is a real precarious place to be sitting because we're not armed. So I said, Sherry, I didn't know her that well, just met her the night before. I said, shouldn't we say something to each other, like we love each other, or whatever happens, Mama, or whatever we have some relation? She's going, yeah. I said, would he be mad because he might not mic us up because he doesn't think we're going to be talking? And she said, well, yeah, I think I can say something. So Rob comes walking through, and Sherry says, oh, Rob, Leslie would like to talk to you for a second. And it was like, I just, I kind of, it's like panic just went through me. And
let me say something for you. She wants to speak to you.
I explained it to Rob. He was very attentive, very nice about it, said nothing. Didn't smile, nothing. He just turned around and walked out. And I said, Sherry, have we really blown it? She goes, I don't know. We'll see. And we both were like fiddling with our nails, and we waited. About 20 minutes later, he comes in with that little scene that we have about when he was a fucking baby. And, there's this beautiful little scene, and the number of people that come up and say, they have copies of the script, would you sign this scene that you had with Sherry? And
And you helped create that scene.
Well, I just gave him the inspiration, I guess. And he didn't just say yes or no.
He went out and wrote it.
He went out and really wrote a beautiful moment between a daughter, because I thought I'm going to kill myself to protect my children later on, because I want them to have time, to get
Yeah.
away. I know the way they're going, right? I'm not sure where they're going, but I want to give them time to escape. And so I'm sitting there trying to kill myself and the gun won't go off. I'm really seriously trying to do it. So obviously I love this girl. I would give my life for her. And the other reason I do it is that Tyler is there, and I'm there, and he's wounded, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want him to take anybody. That's the kind of passion that family has for each other in a very hardcore, can be disturbing to people movie. It's about love.
Well, yeah, it's about the fanatic love
And how
of this
awful
family.
they can treat other people and how, disgusting they can be. Their bond is
Unbreakable.
strangely what every family bond should be. It's just that not every family is crazy. So it was extraordinary. Rob was extraordinary. Every beat. Am I going on too long? I have a tendency.
That's not a problem.
I think it's age. I figure if I don't get it said, I'll never have a chance to say it again.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you and a pleasure interviewing. Once again, I'm a giant fan of your works. I'm pretty
Thank
sure many of
you.
our fans are.
But it's not work. You're a fan of my pleasure.
Your passion.
It is a passion and it's a pleasure, and I've had wonderful, wonderful experiences doing it, and I wouldn't take any of it back.
And that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
So one last question for the road. You mentioned that you've been in a ton of plays and all that. May I ask your favorite play?
Favorite play that I've been in?
Well,
Well, yes, the favorite play I've ever been in is one where I originated a role written by author Neil Simon, playwright
Oh.
Neil Simon. Long story short, I wish I could tell you the whole story because it has to do with me falling and sliding down a circular staircase at the Amundsen Theater. I was meeting Neil Simon and Gene Sachs, and I'd been doing a mime workshop outside of LA for a while, and I had mime stuff still stuck on here, and I found out as I'm going down the thing that I'd forgotten when I left the workshop with the kids, forgotten to put my underwear on.
oh my.
So this is like, and not that they saw anything, but I didn't realize till then that that's how I met Neil Simon. And they were laughing so hard, but they said, "Are you all right?" And I'm saying, "No, I've broken my ego," which made him, he thought was funny. But it was a character named Bunny in California Suite. And Bunny is a character that just is passed out, this entire scene, long, long scene. And I'm a gift from Jack Weston, who's playing this character, from his brother. And there's something going on that why he's in California without his wife. Well, his wife comes flying in the next day. He drinks, he's passed out with this hooker in the bed. And she's coming to the Beverly Hills Hotel to see him. And I'm the hooker that's in the bed, and he's got to get rid of the body. And it's like all the mime I'd ever thought of doing, I'm doing in this role on Broadway. And it was an extraordinary experience.
That sounds like it's going to be a blast. Playing passed out, miming the whole.
Well, the big shock
part.
to me was I got locked myself out of my apartment the day that I had gotten the call that Johnny Carson wanted me on the Tonight Show.
Wow.
So I almost didn't get there because I couldn't get in to get my clothes, and I was in a bathing suit. It was a long, terrible story, but I got into the apartment and I got to the Tonight Show. And then when I got to New York, the first thing I found out is that Gene Shalit on the Today Show wanted to interview me. Now, I had no lines, but it was a very funny scene, and Jack was just amazing to work with. Neil Simon was always just the best person to hang out with and listen to and watch. And I got to sit through all those rehearsals and watch these masters create this play. And it was just amazing. So it's my favorite play for that reason. But the other favorite thing I did was I took over the role of Lady Macduff in a production of Macbeth, starring Charlton Heston and Vanessa Redgrave.
Wow.
Now, I was at the Amundsen, and I was helping set a theater group, and so I was driving Vanessa. Phil Silvers I got to drive when he did Funny Thing Happened Away before him before I went to New York, but I was driving Vanessa and adoring her. And she was a wonderful Lady Macbeth. And covering Lady Macduff, but she was murdered during that production, and I took over the role. And Charlton Heston brought me out for a solo bow every single night because I had to finish the run, and that was the saddest role I ever had.
Wow.
And I used to go into the balcony of the Amundsen during rehearsals, and Vanessa would be up there on break doing the outdamned spot scene and working it. She didn't know I was watching, but she played it. The characters are written, they were 18 years old. So most older people do the Macbeths. She would be on that stage as this fresh young 18-year-old. And I didn't know then that that was the intention of Shakespeare.
Because
But I mean,
the standard
just-
age of living back then.
What she poured into that, I'd never seen. So I had these experiences that I got to work with people who were extraordinary when I was young and just starting. And it gives you somewhere to go, and that's
That's got to be impressive and a way to look at the future. I mean, it's just amazing.
and every single role you have is an enormous challenge. I don't care how small it is or how big it is.
Or if you pass out the whole role.
Yeah, because you're part of an ensemble, and if you're part of an ensemble, it all has to balance, and you find your part of that ensemble, like in the movies too.
Mm-hmm.
Your personality, what you bring, has to balance with everything else, because you never want to tip it. You never want to take scenes when they're not yours, and you never want to give them up when they are, and you don't know. So I have a lot of good education.
Well, it was a blast speaking to you. I'm sure everyone that's watching this Notes and Nerds episode is gone through the gambit of emotions that I have talking and listening to you here. Spectacular.
Listen,
Spectacular.
I'm babbling.
It's a pleasure.
But thank you for asking these wonderful questions, and you're so nice to talk to and look at.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I don't
even
think so.
without my glasses, I can see you.
I think it's because you're not wearing your glasses. Rugged is going to be the best way to describe me.
Oh, no, you have a wonderful face. It's very expressive.
But I want to thank everyone. Too bad Eric isn't here. I'm sure he would love to be here and do this interview himself. Once again, everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Notes and Nerds. We will look forward to hearing from you guys later. Have a great day.
Nice meeting you.